We are back this week with the Star Wars What Ifs. Last week, we talked prequel trilogy What Ifs, so go check that out if you didn't see it. I'll link it below. This week, though, we're moving into the original trilogy What Ifs. So this is like the OG Star Wars. Yep. I think if a lot of people think about What Ifs from the originals, they're pretty isolated, like they usually go one of a few directions, but we put out for questions from the audience. We got 6 questions back. Now we got more than 6 responses, but duplicates, a lot of duplicates. So we have got these. I think it's going to be really fun to run through these 6. In the previous episode, I did try to kind of keep it chronological. This one is not so much. We'll keep going the way we're going, but a lot of the themes are the same. So are you kind of enjoying this? I think it's a lot of fun coming off the Acolyte.
It is a lot of fun. Yeah. And I love any excuse to talk about the original trilogy. It's always near and dear to the heart. So I think it'll be fun to do these tonight.
It's been a long time since we've talked about the original trilogy too, which is like, that's probably not a good thing. Like you got to get back to the meat and potatoes like every now and then. Yeah. So we got quite a few questions. Before we hop into it, just want to throw out shameless plug. I do have channel memberships now. We have a few members. Super thankful for y'all. Kevin's a channel member, so thank you, Kevin. He's supporting. So.
Listen, I do nothing here. I show up. Will does literally all the work, so
you're the reason people watch this, though, because you're the textbooks. So
I don't think that's true.
Thank you, channel members, and if you would like to join, there's a link below. You can check out all the benefits, perks, whatever. It's about as great as you would expect, but I do appreciate all of the support. But we'll hop into this now. Question number 1. This is a good one. I'm going to credit this to Dark Vortex. So Dark Vortex submitted some stuff last week as well, some good questions. So this week, another good question. I think you're going to like this one. What if Luke and Leia were swapped?
Ooh.
Yeah.
So Leia went to Tatooine and Luke went with Organa. Oh man, that's interesting. I like that because I feel like Leia would have gotten in trouble on Tatooine. Like she'd have been
hanging trouble everywhere.
She'd have been hanging out in Mos Eisley, like with smugglers, and I feel like she'd have become like a Jyn Erso type character. Who kind of knows some things that she probably shouldn't, and kind of knows some back alley things that are going on. Like that would be a really cool twist. I like that.
That's a good point too. Like she would be like Jyn Erso. That's a very good. A good
I feel like she'd become like scoundrel Leia because she's not going to hang out at the farm, right? Like she's constantly going to be sneaking in the cantina and getting in trouble.
Yeah,
that's a cool one. I like that. And conversely,
we know she's strong, right? Like in the Force too. So when you get to that whole, play it down the line. Like if Obi-Wan's training her, I think that's a pretty cool idea as well because. How would she handle Vader on Bespin? How would she handle facing the Emperor? And at the same time, how would Luke handle leading a rebellion? Because, those emotions, he's very much the Anakin of the two, and she's the Padme. Like, she's measured, she's a lot more polished. But if she ends up on Tatooine, that doesn't happen. So does Luke turn into the Padme and is Leia kind of like Anakin, just, a little bit reckless?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how much of their personality shifts or switches with the other based on who raised them. Because, Luke kind of has to get dragged into it, too. He's pretty reluctant until his, aunt and uncle get murdered.
He just wanted to go to Tashi Station.
All he wanted was those power converters. I wonder if he would have even gotten involved in the rebellion. Because, it took a lot to push him to be like, all right, I'll go with you, with Obi-Wan. Because initially he's like, look, I hate the Empire, but not my battle, right? Like, I'm just trying to get by in the galaxy here, man.
I think it's got to go.
That's interesting.
It's got to go a lot to the raising.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I think
look at Owen.
And I think
Well,
Leia
just
could
look.
definitely. I don't think she would not be able to accomplish the goal. I think she would
No.
be just as capable. I think she'd been far more business.
Yes.
I don't know that she'd have been talking with Vader, conversing with him.
Yeah, she might not have been trying to turn him. She'd have been
Going
trying
for the
to
kill.
take care of him. Yeah, that's true.
I can
Well, I
see
just
that.
think it's back to the raising, like what you said. Like
Yeah.
Owen, he was worried about the farm
Right.
and keeping Luke out of all the trouble. So Luke naturally is raised staying out of the trouble and worried about the farm. And so Leia, on the other hand, I mean, you've got Bail in the Senate, just all of that, the inner workings of the rebellion. So I feel like it probably does go back to who raised you
Yeah.
and how that turns out. I mean, that's how it is in real life. A lot of times we kind of become what our parents make us out to be. Obviously, we grow up and
that's
make
fair.
our own decisions, but it's a big aspect of it.
Yeah, I like this one. I'm going to be thinking about this one after we're done recording still. That's a good one. I like it.
Well, if Disney ever does do this, like the little animated what ifs, they for sure, like, that would be just an easy, like, it's on the tee for them.
Some of these would have to be
it's a good story.
Yeah. That would be
Yeah,
that
so
would be
Dark
cool to watch.
Vortex, that's a really good question. I think just the final verdict on Luke and Leia swapping, I don't know if it takes until Return of the Jedi to take care of things. Like, maybe it goes quicker because
It might.
of Leia.
Yeah, it might. That's true. Yeah, that's funny.
So that's a good one. Now let's stay on the Leia wagon. So we've got this from, I'm not sure how to pronounce this. It's Hihu4025. This is on YouTube. What if Vader trained Leia? So, like, he's wanting to get Luke as an apprentice. What if he gets Leia?
What, maybe after he captures her on the Tantive, like she joins him.
Yeah,
that would be interesting.
Yeah,
boy, that would change a lot.
Well,
like if she, I don't know when that would happen, right? Like, but if that's when it happens, like maybe, like if Vader already knew and he's like, "Hey, I'm your dad, you can join me." I don't see her joining, but if she did, that would change everything, right? Like,
yeah. So the example this user gave was like the Kenobi series is the foundation, so the Empire figures out that she's Force sensitive, and then they get her. So like an Inquisitor type.
So they get her there.
Yeah.
So get her young.
Yep. So I think just like what we just said about the original trilogy, okay, if Leia is in the Luke position, things take care of business a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Well, if Vader has Leia, I think he probably foils the Emperor kind of quick, and they kind of go on their merry way ruling the galaxy.
And I mean, if that happens, Death Star plans never make it to R2, right? Like,
yeah.
At what point does Kenobi get involved and start training Luke at that point? If that message never arrives, probably too late. That's what it sounds like. Well,
also, like, just kind of imagine this too, as far as Obi-Wan goes. Now that I hadn't thought of this before, but like, I mean, he's lost everything. That's kind of Obi-Wan's thing, is he loses everything, but he keeps pushing on. And so he would know if Vader got Leia. It would almost be as if it's his failure. So at that point, is he true. That's another thing he's lost. Like, does he finally just dial it in? Or does it push him even further? Like, oh, I've got to start training Luke now because Leia's got that head start. I think that's an interesting idea too.
Man, that would be crazy. Because if it comes to it, I mean, if they fought as early as, the timeline of A New Hope, I feel like Leia wins.
Yeah. If she was trained and Luke wasn't.
Because again, she's so much more like focused than Luke is. She's determined. Got a lot more drive, I feel like. Yeah. So,
well, what is Hu Yang says about Anakin when they're asking what Anakin was like, and he just turns and he goes, intense. I mean, that's Leia.
Yeah,
she's
that's
intense.
True. Yeah. That would be an interesting one too.
In my head canon, I like to think, if that were to happen, I think somehow Bail and Obi-Wan get with Yoda, and they like have to be like, okay, the plans have got to change.
This is a problem.
Leia's already being trained. So if it's say it's that same timeline where they're like 9, are they 9 at the time in that movie or in the series? I think that was
something
right.
Like that. Yeah.
So, okay, you give Luke also a 10-year head start training. Like, essentially, they just go back to the old Jedi ways and kidnap him and start training him. I mean, like they would never done that before. So
Yeah.
you just take Luke to Dagobah at 9, and you get Yoda and Obi-Wan training him, and Bail kind of covering the rebellion.
Hmm.
You know, Luke
Yeah.
barely trained, defeats Vader.
It's true.
So imagine Luke trained for 10 years. His training would be better from Obi-Wan and Yoda than I think what Leia would get.
Yeah. Yeah. So then it would come down, it'd be a Vader Leia versus Obi-Wan and Luke.
That would be so cool to see.
That would be cool.
So cool.
That would be intense.
Yeah. So, man, that would be incredible.
Yeah, Disney's got to make this happen. Like,
they should for sure parallel that
right
story in something else. Like when they keep making these stories years from now, they should take that theme somehow and do something with that. I like that question a lot.
Yeah.
That's a good one. So next we're gonna I guess this would kind of be in the same timeline of this. So this is from Outer Rim Replicas on Instagram. Go check his work out. It's some pretty good stuff. If you haven't, like making cosplay stuff, helmets, things like that.
Yeah, you just mentioned it to me, and I was looking at it. Yeah, it's some pretty incredible work.
Quality product, and we're talking like probably better than what they had in the movies. So definitely go check out that page, Outer Rim Replicas. But this is a good question, okay? Darth Maul defeats Obi-Wan in Rebels. Trains
backing
Luke.
Up a little bit. And trains Luke.
Trains Luke. Because he knows Obi-Wan's watching over Luke.
Oh, man.
So
that's another really good one. So Maul takes out Obi-Wan, knows Luke is there, and then gets him to go with him and train.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously Maul's ultimate goal is he's still trying to get at the Emperor, right? Like,
yes, he wants to take out the Emperor. Yeah.
I think they still join the rebellion. I think Maul uses the rebellion.
Yeah, he's got a hint of that in him
because he's good at that. Right? He used the Mandalorians, right? They were fodder for his purposes.
Yeah.
I think him and his sneaky, deceptive ways. He trains Luke. They band up with the rebels, and then of course at the end he does his own thing. But oh man, that's a great one. I like that.
Does he though? That's the question though. Because what if he does get what he wants? What if Luke? Like, what if they do take out the Emperor and he can just go do his little crime thing? Like, what if he just kind of turns into a softie like Boba Fett? I mean, that's back to bathing and crime.
That's a good question. Is what would Maul even do once his vengeance quest was over? Right? Because
like the dog chasing the car
pretty much defines him as soon as he loses to Kenobi. That's a defining trait of his character. Every time we see him, is he wants revenge, and so he loses, to Ahsoka. He loses, he and Savage try to take out the Emperor. They lose that.
That's a great duel.
It would be interesting to see what his character does if he got revenge. That is interesting to think about. Does he just fade off into the distance?
Yeah, I mean, he would get it twice, right? Because he would get the Obi-Wan revenge
Kenobi
finally,
and the Emperor,
and then the Emperor. He would assume he has to take out Vader too.
Because does Maul want to lead the Empire?
No, I don't think he cares.
Care about that. I don't either.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, he's still not going to not want power.
Listen, in a weird way, I could see this turning out well, right? Like, he and Luke take out the Emperor. Maul's done. I don't know. It depends on how corrupted Luke was, I guess. But
yeah, I was going to say, it depends on if they join the rebellion or if Maul takes Luke within the crime syndicates and they go that route. Because then Luke is just like a super slimy Sith Lord under Darth Maul. Or I guess he wouldn't technically be a Sith, but
which I guess
it would be that situation.
Is there enough firepower in the crime syndicates to get him into that position, take out the Emperor? You'd have to get them all together, I feel like.
There's in the comics, the Vader comics, you haven't read them. I've read, I'm caught up until this year's editions.
Okay.
There's like a whole little arc where the crime syndicates are gunning after Vader, and
Oh,
so and there's like some backstabbing goes on, things like that. They're formidable. I will say, I won't spoil the whole thing, but they are formidable in this battle. They've got the resources and everything. So, I, I mean, they'd have a seat at the table. They'd have a
yeah,
chance. And I
that
mean,
is
if you
interesting.
got Darth Maul and Luke,
And Luke,
plus you've still got a rebellion going in from the other
yeah.
direction on them. So that would be a cool three-pronged
Although,
trilogy.
although, does the rebellion cease to exist without Luke? Probably.
No,
You don't think so?
well, I don't.
I mean, the Death Star doesn't get blown up.
Well, no, you're right there, but I'm just saying, like, as far as that timeline goes, because Maul
Yeah,
would get Luke
yeah,
at a certain age at that point. So, I mean, you've got a period of time up until Yavin
yeah,
where that would be a
yeah. No, the
thing.
rebellion
So,
wouldn't be gone immediately. So it's interesting. That
also,
could
all
go a
right, all
lot
right,
of
here's
ways.
another thing. Sorry, this is
Okay,
a tangent, but like,
all
okay,
right.
let's say they're going to blow up Yavin. Just take everybody somewhere else. I mean, I know you don't have like the longest amount of time, but like in the sequels, not that they're perfect, but like they
It's
start
funny.
getting people off of what planet were they on in 7 and 8 that the First Order like bombards and they have to run away? Were they actually on Dantooine or were they somewhere else?
At which part? What are
In
we talking about?
seven, so in 7 at the end where that rebel base is, and then 8
Oh,
where they're leaving at the beginning.
yes, I know what you're talking about now. It might have
Like
been
they
Dantooine.
could, the rebellion wouldn't end. It would not
Yeah,
be a great situation, but they would end up on Hoth or something like that. Like they would have a new base. Now the Death Star would just keep showing up and blowing up those bases, but that's a different thing.
Slight problem there.
Yeah. So either
Uh,
way, that's a really good question. If Maul
that's a
gets
good one.
Luke, I think though the Empire ultimately wins probably
Oh, I think
because
so.
you got a divided factions, and so the bigger of the three wins would be my thought there. But then Yoda's still out there. I don't know. Would be interesting.
Yeah.
So this next question, this was asked from a couple different accounts. So PT3118 and then Gaunt Droid Army, who put in some questions last week as well. Um, this is on YouTube. Obi-Wan Kenobi defeats Vader on the Death Star.
Ooh. Wow.
Upset of the century there.
Yeah, I mean that.
But would it be? Because Obi-Wan's whipped him all the other times. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that it would be an upset. It would look like an upset
Because
contextually
he's
with
old.
Vader and
Yeah.
Alec Guinness, but
Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
historically it wouldn't be an upset. Well, that
Yeah.
would be, man. That's another one that completely shifts like all the trajectories of everybody, right? Because Luke gets trained, right? He probably is a little more sure-footed and not as hard-headed as he is in Empire. I'm assuming he still goes to see Yoda, right? Trains
They
there.
would go
But
there together. Yeah.
I mean, the big question is, what does the Emperor do without Vader?
That's what I was going to say.
That's a huge gap in in the movies.
Yeah.
I mean, that changes so much.
Well, you bump a movie ahead. Like Empire has to essentially go the way of, history, and you have to go to
Yeah.
Return of the Jedi where the Emperor starts gunning for Luke. And so he
Yep.
has to kind of work his way in that way. Do you introduce Amara Jade? Do you do
There'd have to be
something?
somebody, right? I mean, the Emperor's
Yeah, or
not just going to go
Inquisitors.
solo. Yeah. Yeah.
Marok, maybe.
But I mean,
That would be
gosh, by the
funny.
time Solo never gets captured, right? Never go to Jabba's palace. Like none of that happens without Vader. So
Now
it
here's a
would
question.
change everything. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a domino thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if Obi-Wan defeats Vader, I still don't know that Obi-Wan gets off the Death Star because he's doing that as a
Trying to get
distraction to
Luke out.
get Luke and
Yeah.
Leia gone. So and Han. So what if he defeats Vader, but then either he's gunned down by stormtroopers or he ends up on the Death Star when it's blown up? Does he
Yeah.
take it out
That's a
from
good point.
within? I mean, I don't know that you see Obi-Wan defeating Vader and he necessarily lives at the same time.
That's a good point. Yeah, because he draws a lot of attention. I mean, that's pretty much all the well, most of the stormtroopers are just standing around watching them fight.
Being useful stormtroopers.
You got to think as soon as Vader drops, they just open fire.
There's a bunch of them too.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's pretty much surrounded by them. So you might be right. He doesn't make it out probably.
That door also, which I guess Luke hits the door to make it shut, right? He shoots it and hits it. So he wouldn't do that. And then if the stormtroopers turn to go after Obi-Wan, Luke, Han, and Leia could shoot the stormtroopers because their backs would be turned. So, maybe he does make it. I don't know.
I don't know though. I think the Falcon doesn't get out of there as easily without that
distraction.
Like if Obi-Wan's trying to get to the Falcon, I mean, they're just sitting there longer waiting on him.
Did he forget how to force push, by the way?
Yes.
That I've forgotten.
He definitely did. He definitely.
What about that forced sprint he did like 40 years previously? Maybe he could do that.
I love how there's this one random moment in The Phantom Menace where he and Qui-Gon just like hit hyperspeed and run down the hall, and it's like never a thing again. It's like, okay, George.
Yeah, that's a different. Should have been a what if.
I think it's great.
That should have been a what if from last
week.
It's so funny. What if the Jedi didn't forget how to force sprint? I mean,
why don't just zipped around everywhere?
I mean, what if they, Darth Maul shows up, funny. Okay? They both force sprint, and he's like, "Oh, where'd they go?" And then you get them. But I don't know. Either way,
yeah, maybe they're always force sprinting. I don't think Count Dooku
could have caught them either if they force sprinted. I don't think he could have fought them. Either way, so good question. Do you think the rebellion comes out ahead a lot sooner if he defeats Vader, or does it cause more issues?
I definitely
because Luke
think
redeeming Vader is like his comeuppance. That's how he gets there. So does it take an integral part out of Luke becoming Luke if he doesn't redeem Vader?
Yeah, that's a good point. And not only that, but there's a lot of things that transpire between Luke and Vader. Is it? I don't know. Like thinking about like just I don't know how it would play up to the Battle of Endor, like if that even still happens, but right, like just do they get in sneakier because Vader doesn't sense Luke's coming in? Like there's a lot of stuff. I do think it's easier for to take him out, but at the same time, I don't know that I think you're right. I don't know that Luke's the same person.
Also, who defeats the Emperor?
He would. The only thing I don't know. Does he go down on the Death Star?
Luke didn't defeat the Emperor.
No, he didn't.
Vader did. He brought Vader back around. So
does that mess things up? Taking out the Chosen One?
Well, yeah, that's a big deal. I mean, the Chosen One taking out the Emperor doesn't even work, it turns out. So,
can you imagine the judgment that Obi-Wan would get as a Force ghost? It's like, dude, you killed the Chosen One.
Yeah, it's Qui-Gon. Those reels that guy does. That's like he deep fakes. That would be those so good funny. With Qui-Gon going, "What the heck, man?" That'd have been good.
That is funny.
So this next question, this is kind of the opposite of the previous question. So this is from Help You Much 6887. This is on YouTube. Instead of Vader getting defeated by Obi-Wan, what if in Return of the Jedi, Vader survives? So he takes out the Emperor, and then you have
lives as Anakin
Skywalker as the Chosen One.
That's cool. I like that. Yeah, that'd be an amazing ending.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not saying it's better. It would be cool though.
But can it really be? Because like that's the whole thing. Is like you can't just say, "Oh, well, we will omit all of the heinous things you did the last 2 decades."
No, I think that's actually a pretty fascinating plot path to take, though, is right? Like, what do you do with Anakin Skywalker after he redeems himself? Like, how does he go on to live in a galaxy that sees him as Darth Vader? Like, that could be really interesting.
Or would the galaxy see him as Darth Vader?
I think people would know. I don't think they could keep it a secret forever. Does he just maybe he just goes into hiding, right? Just
goes to Dagobah.
Yeah, goes and lives with in the Yoda hut.
Could be. I think so. Here's another thought on this. Vader in the comics knows about Exegol. And that's when he figures out, like, there's nothing I can do. It kind of plays into that it's too late for me that he says in Return of the Jedi. He knows all that the Emperor is doing. So it's almost as if, do you go into the, hey, we've beat him, but now we've got to go, like, take out Exegol type of thing.
That might have been important to tell Luke as he was dying.
Hey, we're not thinking with these sequels. This is damage control.
Just kidding.
This is damage control.
I know. Yeah, that's true, right? Would they then be able to go ahead and disrupt any plans for the Emperor to
return,
to rejuvenate himself?
By the way,
somehow
he returns. I hate Rise of Skywalker.
I know.
I love Exegol. Okay. I love the idea.
It's a cool idea. Yeah, like this hidden Sith world. Why. It's a cool idea.
Like, how can I juggle the two? I don't know. But I really like the idea of the Emperor having this huge backup. Because I don't hate Palpatine coming back. I hate the execution of Palpatine coming back. Right? Like, it's okay with a clone Emperor. I mean, you read some of the Legends books and you get into that territory. But I love the idea that he was, even while he was winning, he was preparing to lose and win again. That's a really cool, very Palpatine thing to do. Yeah. And so I think, especially if you read the Shadows of the Sith book, which is Luke and Lando simultaneously on the hunt for Rey and Exegol at the same time, right? Like probably 20 years before the sequels. It's really cool where they're trying to find it. So I think you could almost take that story. Rey probably wouldn't be a part of it. Lando probably wouldn't be a part of it. But you have Luke and Vader, Luke and Anakin going on these relic hunts and trying to find the Sith world. And I think that's a really cool story to be explored.
Well, I agree. Yeah, I do wish we could revisit Exegol in a different context, because like you said, the idea of it's really fascinating, right? And the idea of the Emperor's plan. I don't know how we bring that back in. It'd have to be well in the past. I don't know.
Yeah. So there's a new book out, The Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire. I don't know if you've seen it or not.
I have, yeah.
It's very much in the same vein, if you're into like podcasts, The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill, like the church, the Mark Driscoll church. It's very similar how they go about telling it. So they're like interviewing and looking at things of Palpatine from like every angle to see how it goes. And the guy telling the story, I'm like 50 pages in right now, but the guy telling the story is a historian on Exegol, like going through all the databanks, archives, and it lists like the notes at the bottom. I've written so many papers for college, and I don't know what they're called, but they're the citations, footnotes,
citations,
and it's like it's from like, okay, this was the file on Count Dooku from Exegol, from the Sith archive, stuff like that. So it's a really neat thing. Makes it like a history book kind of.
That is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think by the time I read through all of that over the next few weeks, I think I will like Exegol even more. It will make me want this story even more, like Vader getting to go find
check that out. That does sound interesting.
I'm renting it for free, so
yeah, I know our library system does not have nearly as the wealth of options.
You do Libby as well, right?
Yeah, but it still links up to what your like
Charleston,
your local, whatever your
dodged you.
It's okay. Yeah. I don't think I've done anything too crazy for anybody to be coming after me. I don't.
Yeah, right. Out of the Clone Wars people, they come get you. So, before we get to the last question, I have a question I would like to submit.
Oh, all right.
And that is, what if Palpatine doesn't somehow return? Like, what if Anakin... So, Return of the Jedi ends...
Yeah.
As we accepted it, having ended up until 2019. Or, no, sorry, 2015. Well, I guess 2019 was still that way.
Yeah.
It was 2019 where we learned the Palpatine deal, but then Luke's kind of sad in 2015. So maybe, up until then.
It's very sad.
Yeah.
I mean, the internet would have been a lot less angry. That's for sure.
Potentially.
Yeah, I mean that just opens up a plethora of options, right? Like to be able to have some other threat be the defining, antagonist of Luke, ideally.
Yep.
Yeah, that would be. I mean, 'cause that's really all it does is it just opens it back up. Because there's no telling. I mean, because you could point to any of the legend stories, right? Like, because they went with a million
Air,
different
yeah.
directions. With also, I mean, the
They
number
did,
of
yeah.
villains that pop up at that point between Thrawn,
Yeah.
you have a clone emperor at one point, and eventually it gets pretty crazy in terms of other intergalactic species
Yeah.
invading and all that stuff. And so, um, I mean, there's a plethora of things that you could do, and I don't think the emperor part was necessarily, like you said earlier. I think the execution of it's what bothered people the most.
Yeah.
I think there would be good. There's good stories to tell, right? And so,
Lots.
um, if you've watched this, you know that we're not super fans of the sequels, and so
Not all of it,
they
yeah.
are. They are. Yeah, there's parts of it we like, but it would be interesting to see that open back up and just what all the options were if it wasn't the Emperor. Like who comes along and pushes Luke or challenges his
Yeah.
new Jedi Order, all that kind of thing that people have probably thought about quite a bit.
I'm going to be a lot more vanilla with this answer.
All right.
So I think nothing changes up until episode 9. So, okay, Luke,
Interesting.
whatever. Okay, so let's say this First Order thing did just kind of happen out of the Imperial Remnant, and it's not Palpatine. You've got this remnant with Thrawn and whatever coming. So let's say the First Order still comes through. Luke,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with the whole Skywalker story, I mean, and George even said it's about the kids, grandkids, whatever. Say Ben Solo still falls, and Snoke is still the bad guy, pulling. He's the new bad guy, and so then Kylo Ren takes out Snoke. I think episode 9, because by the way, a lot of people were really mad at The Last Jedi. Not my favorite movie, but that trilogy is not broken, in my opinion, at The Last Jedi. It's broken in The Rise of Skywalker when they cannot stick to a story. So let's say you go 7, very safe film. 8, they kind of turn it on its head. 9, the focus is still on Kylo Ren. So he is the bad guy. And then you go from there. What happens there? I think that's very interesting. I think that's the way it should have went, as Kylo Ren actually leading the First Order and not bringing in another bad guy at the end.
And I think at one point that was the intention.
That was the
wasn't
film. Duel of
Is
the
that-
Fates, yeah, is what it's going to be called.
Yeah, is that
It's pretty
he
cool if you ever want to
actually?
go read the script. The Colin
Yeah.
Trevorrow. Yeah.
Because it was more of a reverse of Vader's arc, right? Instead of moving
Yeah.
to this point of redemption, where you move to this point of being the
Bad.
big bad villain.
The ending
That's
battle
true,
was on
right? Like
Coruscant.
I guess
That'd
we
been
don't
cool.
really know what it is. I mean, we know that Snoke was influencing Ben Solo, and we know that was Palpatine pulling the strings. But so if Snoke is not connected to Palpatine,
yeah,
it would be interesting
originally
to
that
see.
wasn't the plan.
Right. Yeah, it would. Man, that would be interesting to see how that all plays
I think
out. You
Snoke's
might be right.
cool.
I like Snoke, but you might be right. Things might not change because the Emperor really, other than Snoke, which right, so you could say Snoke is around even without the Emperor, which we know isn't necessarily true now, but the Emperor doesn't factor into any of those movies until episode 9, right?
Yep.
So you could keep everything pretty much the same up until that point.
And just don't fire Colin Trevorrow and replace him with J.J. Abrams and make him do a movie in 60 days. It wasn't 60 days, but it was really like a year and a half. They said, you've got no time to make this movie.
Awfully mismanaged.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't go down to the actors. I don't even know if it goes down to JJ. It goes down to like, hey, make a blockbuster in 180 days. Yeah. It's kind of rough. But either way, last question. That's kind of the previous one. That's kind of like a sneak peek into next week's sequel trilogy. What ifs? That'd be pretty fun next week. But last question. This is the quintessential classic, like of all Star Wars what ifs. I think this is the what if, in my opinion. So this is from Patrick with Poptography. He's on Instagram, YouTube. I will say this once, I'll say it a million times. Best toy photographer on the planet. Go check him out. It's good stuff. What if Luke joins Vader in Empire Strikes Back? So he takes the offer. They have to shake with left hands, though.
Before or after he gets his hand cut off?
Yeah, it's after. He has to shake Vader's left hand. Yeah.
So he's still a little bitter about it.
Anger, yeah, to the dark side.
That would be interesting. Because Vader doesn't even necessarily approach it. He kind of approaches it the same way Dooku does, right? Like, join me so we can take out the Emperor, right? And so, it'd be better, right? Who wants the Emperor around? And
he approaches it with truth as well. Yeah. The same way as Dooku does. Dooku is not lying when he's like, what if I told you? And he tells him exactly what's happening.
A big parallel there. And you have to wonder, like, Obi-Wan does join Dooku and they manage to take out the Emperor, like, because at that point, Dooku knows a lot more about him than the Jedi do. The things end better. Like, I don't see necessarily Obi-Wan fall into the dark side by joining Dooku. And so a part of me wonders if Luke could still not follow the dark side and join Vader and take out the Emperor and still have his goal of redeeming.
Yeah. I kind of thought the same thing, is joining Vader and redeeming Vader don't have to be separate.
Yeah. I think with the Luke Skywalker that we know and see throughout the trilogy, I think that is what he tries to do.
Eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, that is
cool.
Yeah. So I don't know that much. I do think they take out the Emperor, but I don't know that it would necessarily change what Luke is able to communicate to Vader and eventually turn him. And then survives in that scenario. Which kind of goes back to our other what if, but
now also, if he does say Luke joins him, does Vader even get the opportunity? Because does he take him back to the Emperor and then the Emperor turns Luke on Vader? I mean,
that's possible.
Because the Emperor wanted Luke. So
I think it depends on whether at that point, if Vader convinces Luke to join him, does he take him back to the Emperor?
It would be odd if he didn't, because he has zero resources.
That's true. He does rely on the Empire.
They don't go to the Rebellion. Yeah. So
that's true.
Also, Han Solo stays in Carbonite.
That's also true.
Yeah. I don't know. Honestly, this is like probably the hardest question too, because I don't know what happens. On paper, you say, "Oh, they take out the Emperor." But I don't know if that does happen. I just don't know. I mean, the Imperial Guards are still there. Does it turn into a Last Jedi type throne room scene, with Snoke and Rey and Kylo Ren? Like, they have to take out the Imperial Guard, and then, Vader takes out the Emperor, and then what happens from there? I don't know. I think it's interesting.
I don't know that if, so you said that if, does the Emperor have Luke immediately turn on Vader? If Luke knows that Vader is his father, I don't think the Emperor would have had enough time to build up that dark side hate yet to get him to kill him. So I don't think he kills him right away. I think it's got to be a process.
Him what Anakin did.
Oh, that's true too.
Killed your mom. I mean, he could say that.
Killed your mom. This guy right here. That's not true. She died from a broken heart. So
it wasn't the respiratory issues or childbirth or any of that.
The collapsed larynx,
lungs. Yeah,
heartbreak.
Something.
I mean, she must have been. To be fair, she was probably very sad. I mean,
she was sad. Was she sad enough to go to an island?
Jeez.
A pretty island. No. A pretty island. So, I mean,
it's good.
I think the Emperor gets Luke if they do it. I think the Emperor gets him. Or knowing that the Emperor had Vader's suit set to turn on Vader, like if he wanted to.
Yeah.
I think the Emperor could for sure take out Vader.
Yeah, that's true.
And then you've got a
Yeah, I
Luke
don't
Emperor
know.
situation, and Luke never beat the Emperor.
I don't.
Episode 5, Luke never beats
Yeah.
the Emperor. I can tell you that. Like, if it's
I mean,
just right after
obviously,
that.
one of the other big what ifs is if Luke joins the Emperor. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, just based in this scenario, I don't know that Luke ever does join the Emperor though. Like, I think he moves forward with good intentions. I
Okay.
don't know that he just wholesale's like, "Yep, I'm on your side now." So I think the Emperor kills him eventually. I don't know when, how long he tries to turn him, but maybe he does. Maybe Luke Skywalker has that breaking point, and the Emperor turns him, and the Empire reigns.
If he can be turned by Vader, I think he could be turned by the Emperor in that state.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you got to think it's episode 5, Luke, not episode 6.
Yeah.
So I think Palpatine comes
It's
out
pretty
on top.
distraught at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting thought, though.
Yeah.
And so what if they do take out Palpatine, though? What do Luke and Vader do? Do they go take out the rebellion next? Or is Luke, like you said, benevolent, and then he has to fight Vader because Vader's not?
Well, it depends on if he finds out Leia's his sister, but I don't see him taking out his friends.
Yeah.
That would take a lot longer, I feel like, of falling to the dark side to be at that point. But yeah. I don't know. I could be wrong. I feel like question. It would be funny though if he joins Vader and they go back to the rebellion and Luke just shows up and he's like, "Hey, brought help." That would be entertaining. It'd be almost like a sitcom.
Yeah.
Luke and Vader.
Well, it's almost like Ahsoka letting Maul out, in that Clone Wars episode. That type of idea. Like, you just let chaos reign, and then you have to deal with it. So you just, like, Vader, go do your thing. We're not liable for what you do. we're not rooting for you, but we need you to get what we want done.
Least likely scenario, but it would be pretty entertaining to see. So,
no, that's good, Patrick. That's a good question. It's the classic question. And it's the one I have the hardest time coming to a conclusion on because there's a lot of what ifs within that what if. So that was our original trilogy what ifs. I know there's a lot more we could have asked. Like, what if they didn't get Han out of carbonite, or what if Luke fell into the Sarlacc pit? Stuff like that. There's a lot of realistic what ifs. Or what if they don't blow up the Death Star? We kind of talked about that. But that was the ones we had submitted. So a lot of fun. Thanks to everyone who did submit those questions. Really enjoyed it. Now, next week is, so I'm going to make a request. Next week is sequel trilogy what ifs. Gonna send this out in a question as well, but you can drop it in these comments too. Be respectful. The sequel trilogy is what it is. It exists. It's canon. There are real life people who played these actors that had, or played these characters that had no bearing in what happened. There were directors who thought they were doing a great job. So just be nice, genuine, story-driven what ifs. Maybe a few funny ones I might throw in here and there that we can keep respectful. But that's what we're doing next week. So please submit those questions. We'll have a good time with those. And then we'll have to see what we're doing after that. But thanks for watching. Let us know what you thought in the comments, and we will catch you next time.